The headlines scream, America's ports are frozen, the port of Los Angeles stands still, East Coast docks are deserted. It's October 17, 2025. The arteries of American commerce have seized. Once bustling ports now echo with silence. Cranes frozen, containers stacked and forgotten, truck lots empty. This isn't a strike or a holiday, it's a collapse. The shockwave ripples inland, warehouses idle, store shelves sparse, the American consumer facing a new reality. The invisible network that delivered the world to our doorstep has been severed. This isn't a natural disaster or a traditional attack, it's something quieter, more insidious. The cause? A financial decision made in Beijing, a move in a new kind of global conflict. China, the world's factory, has turned off the tap. The ships are no longer coming. For decades, America's ports were the gateways to the world's largest market. Today, they're relics, silent witnesses to a seismic shift in global power. The nation is caught unprepared, staring at empty docks and a future suddenly uncertain. The world has changed overnight. The question now, can America adapt before it's too late? This crisis didn't start with ships. It started with numbers on a screen. Months of rising tension led to aggressive U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods, but the real shock came from U.S. financial sanctions on major Chinese banks, cutting them off from the dollar. The dollar's dominance gave America leverage until China decided to walk away. In response, Beijing announced it would no longer use the dollar for its exports. American importers suddenly needed vast amounts of yuan, but the U.S. system wasn't ready. Currency conversions became slow, expensive, and risky. Banks hesitated, fearing sanctions. The financial plumbing clogged, payments stalled. Chinese manufacturers stopped releasing goods. Orders were canceled. Production lines in China shifted to other markets. The flow of contracts dried up, and so did the flow of goods. Ships scheduled for U.S. ports were never loaded. The supply chain crisis wasn't caused by a blockade, but by a financial weapon. The currency itself. America's economic power was turned against it. The world's trade engine had found a new gear, one that left the U.S. behind. The consequences were immediate and devastating. The financial crisis collided with a volatile trade war. The U.S. Maritime Sovereignty Act slapped a 50% tariff on goods arriving on Chinese ships. The goal: punish Beijing, revive American shipping, and project strength. The reality: a profound miscalculation. China doesn't just make the goods, it controls the ships, the ports, the containers. U.S. policymakers ignored the fact that America's merchant fleet is a shadow of China's. There weren't enough non-Chinese ships to carry the trade. The tariffs became a self-imposed blockade, making imports prohibitively expensive. American importers faced a double bind. They couldn't pay for Chinese goods, and shipping costs soared. The supply chain buckled. The tariff gambit exposed America's fragility, not its strength. China didn't blink. It simply played a different game. America's ports waited for ships that would never come. As American ports fell silent, others roared to life. China's response was swift and strategic. The Great Rerouting, state-controlled shipping lines redirected vessels away from the U.S., bypassing the world's largest consumer market. AI-powered logistics redrew trade maps in weeks. Cargo, bound for Los Angeles, went to Mexico's Manzanillo. Shipments for New York landed in Halifax or Europe. Goods entered the U.S. by truck, rail, or smaller ships, slower, costlier, but outside U.S. control. This kept Chinese factories running and sent a message: global trade no longer needed to pass through America. U.S. ports became obstacles, not gateways. Los Angeles saw container volume plunge 70%. Manzanillo's traffic surged 150%. China turned U.S. policy into a weapon against itself, enriching neighbors and shifting global trade. The pivot was a masterclass in geoeconomic strategy. America's isolation was China's opportunity. The world's trade routes had been rewritten. The U.S. was left watching from the sidelines. Rerouting ships was just the start. Beijing unleashed export controls on critical materials, rare earths, pharmaceutical precursors, advanced microchips. These weren't blanket bans, they were surgical strikes, targeting U.S. industries while rewarding compliant allies. American automakers lost access to EV magnets. Tech firms saw electronics production grind to a halt. The defense industry sounded alarms over critical components. China controls over 80% of rare earth processing. With a single policy, it tightened the chokehold. The message: China could retaliate asymmetrically, leveraging its dominance in supply chains. While the US relied on tariffs, China used logistics and materials as weapons. The rules of economic warfare had changed. The US was fighting yesterday's battle. China was shaping tomorrow's world. The cost to American industry was immediate and severe. The global balance of power was shifting. The numbers are staggering, but the pain is personal. Frank Miller, a longshoreman in New York, went from 60-hour weeks to nothing. His son's truck sits idle. They're facing foreclosure. Across the country, over 300,000 port-related jobs vanished in 2 months. Longshoremen, truckers, warehouse workers, mechanics. Communities built around the rhythm of ships are crumbling. Inland, California's vast warehouses stand half-empty, designed for motion, but now silent. Maria Sanchez, a laid-off supervisor, waits for a call that never comes. Inventory sits untouched. Small businesses are crushed. A Chicago boutique can't get its fall line. An Ohio electronics store can't restock TVs. These entrepreneurs can't navigate global currency markets or arrange new logistics. They're the most vulnerable link in a shattered chain. The economic war on the high seas is claiming casualties in America's heartland. The crisis isn't just about trade, it's about livelihoods lost. The ripple effects are everywhere. Empty diners, idle mechanics, families on the brink. The supply chain collapse is a human disaster. The American dream is on hold. The cost is measured in broken lives. The crisis has split the world's fortunes. America's economy sputters, ports idle, industries starved. Meanwhile, Europe's ports are booming, flooded with cargo once bound for the US. European firms fill gaps, winning orders Americans can't fulfill. Washington urges unity, but Europe sees opportunity and keeps trading with Beijing. European consumers avoid shortages and price hikes. China's trade with the EU surges, surpassing the US. The transatlantic alliance is strained, not by war, but by diverging interests. China adapts, shifting focus to its domestic market and new partners through Belt and Road. The crisis accelerates China's push for de-dollarization and supply chain control. America is stalled. Europe is gaining and China is evolving. The global economic map is being redrawn. The world is watching and learning. The old order is fading fast. The crisis has revealed deep flaws in America's economic foundation. Decades of just-in-time manufacturing and outsourcing brought low prices, but no resilience. The US became dependent on distant suppliers, with no buffer or backup. When the flow stopped, the system collapsed. Empty shelves show a system with no slack, no plan B. America's infrastructure, ports, railways, bridges, is outdated and underfunded. Even if ships returned, the backlog would overwhelm the system. The greatest weakness? A failure of imagination. Policymakers never envisioned a world where the US wasn't the center of global trade. The levers of power that worked in the past are losing their force. Economic power now means production, logistics, and control over resources. America's vulnerabilities are exposed for all to see. October 17, 2025, America stands at a crossroads. One path, de-escalation. The White House could pause tariffs and sanctions, hoping to lure ships back. This might bring a temporary surge of goods, but trust is broken, and the old system can't be restored overnight. China and global shippers will keep their new routes as insurance. The US may find it can't simply flip a switch and return to normal. The other path, doubling down. The crisis becomes the new normal. America faces isolation, forced to rebuild domestic manufacturing at great cost and disruption. Higher prices, fewer choices, and a reordering of daily life would follow. The bigger question, what does American leadership mean if the world no longer needs its ports? The silent cranes are more than an economic warning. They're a symbol of a shifting world order. The American century is in question. The world is moving on, the future is uncertain, and the stakes have never been higher.